What's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, welcoming you to my Week 9 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 9, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Normally, I start out with my thoughts from the previous week's action of the NFL, but because we're in Week number 9, we have reached the halfway point of the regular season. We only have 9 weeks left of this 2025 NFL season before the playoffs begin. I'm gonna discuss a few things who I thought maybe so far been the big winners this season, who I think has been the big disappointment, who I think the biggest surprise has been, and also going to throw in which team has been the biggest joke this season. I'm going to begin what I felt has been the big winner so far at this point of the regular season has really been the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts currently right now only have one loss and currently right now hold the top. They're currently number one in the AFC right now. They hold the number one seed so far at this point. But we're still a ways away to see what will happen down the stretch. But when you look at this Colts team, the way that Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor and the way they've got that offense going, it's been unbelievable. And I also will throw in that the Colts have also been the biggest surprise of the NFL season so far. So the Colts have so far been a big winner and the biggest surprise of this NFL season. What remains to be seen what happens down the stretch. I mean, I want to see what they will do against, because they do have to play the Chiefs very, very soon. And I want to see that matchup between them. And because I know you're probably saying, but what about like the Bills and all that? Well, to me, the Chiefs, given what's been happening with them, they're starting to rise. And I think given the way their schedule is the rest of the way, they might be storming back. And who knows if they might fight for that number one seed taking over the Colts. But it's remained to be seen yet. But the Colts so far have been the big winner so far at this halfway point of the regular season. Who's been the NFL's biggest disappointment so far? No question, it has been the Washington Commanders. A team that looked like they were ready to take that next step, and with Jaden Daniels in his second year, it's obviously been a sophomore slump for him. Given the fact he's dealt with injuries, and then you bring in Deebo Samuel, and yet you would think that this offense would really finally take that next step, and given the Eagles an enormous challenge, but yet given their current record so far at this halfway point, they've been probably the biggest disappointment. This was a team that was expected to be a big time spoiler going into this season to really give the Eagles fits in the division, but apparently that's not been the case. And you can say the Eagles have also been a kind of a disappointment too, even though given their current record they shouldn't be. But obviously because, their offense has struggled throughout the whole season, even though despite their record doesn't look like it. The Commanders and Eagles so far have been disappointments. And obviously I want to get to the last part, who has been the biggest joke of the NFL so far. I mean, it's obvious. It's the New York Jets. Getting Justin Fields and hoping they get that offense going. And Aaron Glenn getting his first... It's the first year as his coaching venue there as the head coach. It's been an utter disaster. Now, even though despite the fact that they beat the Bengals, and you could make a case that the Bengals were another disappointment this NFL season, but obviously because you have to throw in the Joe Burrow injury and the fact that their defense has played like crap. The Jets are the biggest joke so far this season. And you can also make the case for the Dolphins to have been an enormous joke. But it's really more the Jets because it took until week number 8 for them to get their first win of the season, and obviously beating a really, really torn apart Bengals team getting their first win. So yeah, those have been my thoughts from this first half and who I thought were the big winners, the big disappointments, and the obvious joke. As far as what I say who might be MVP, you could make a case for Baker Mayfield. You can make a case for Daniel Jones. I might throw in Jared Goff in there as well. The way that Detroit offense, they're still on a groove. You can also make a case for Jordan Love, but he's kind of been under the radar because they lost to the Browns earlier in the season, and they also tied the Cowboys. Anyways, my friends, those are my thoughts from the first half of this NFL season. Let's now get into week number 9 as we begin the second half and the final stretch of this NFL season. All right, week 9 schedule really isn't... A lot of these games may seem predictable, and it's hard to say what I consider them to be key games, but these are the 4 games I want to talk about here. Key game number 1 is going to start with the Thursday night game between the Ravens and the Dolphins. The Ravens are an enormous 7.5 point favorite, And I would say probably that's right up there. Maybe they'll go to 7 or maybe 6.5. I'm not really sure. The big question is going for Baltimore because is Lamar Jackson going to come back? And from the latest report is saying that Lamar Jackson is starting to practice a little bit more, even though he was limited last week. There's Coach Harbaugh, John Harbaugh said that he will definitely be playing Thursday night. So that definitely helps the Ravens offense a bit because they had a huge win last week against the Bears, and that really helped them a lot because they're trying to get back into the mix in that AFC North. But to me, given their current record right now, they're kind of more fighting for more or less a wild card spot. Now, the Dolphins have been a huge mess this all season long. Tua, and somehow the Dolphins actually beat the Falcons, which was it was kind of a shocker and a surprise. Tua was 20 of 26, 205 yards, 4 touchdowns, and the big key, no interceptions. It probably played, so far, that was his best game so far this season. But when you look at, if you look at the keys for this game, look, obviously for the Ravens, getting Lamar Jackson back is huge. And he and Derrick Henry, they need to ball out big time and get that offense going for them. Because really the Dolphins defense, I don't really trust them at all. If you look at the ways that the Dolphins are going to win this game, Tua must have another flawless performance. And really given the fact that Eric Waddle really is his only target he's got left in that wide receiving core, and the way their running game has struggled, even though the Ravens still are dealing with injuries in the defensive end themselves, they got to find. That's the only way they're going to have another flawless performance if they're going to beat the Ravens here. Who's going to win this football game? I'm picking the Ravens here. I think they'll get their third win, and I think this is where they may start making a stretch here because they're slowly starting to get their team more healthy again, obviously, but they still have some key players that are out for the season. But I think the Ravens are starting to make a move now, and getting Lamar Jackson back will help them. And I'm going to pick the Ravens to beat the Dolphins here. It's really a crucial game for the Ravens here because they're going to have to probably win out the rest of their games now if they even want to talk about the playoffs. I'm picking the Ravens to beat the Dolphins here. The Dolphins are a huge mess here, and obviously they're probably more likely fighting for more draft picks as well. Ravens over the Dolphins at -7.5. Key game number 2, it is the Falcons versus the Patriots. The Patriots are 6.5-point favorite. I would say that'd probably be about right, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to 6. Now, Drake May last week in a big victory over the Browns went 18 of 24, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was picked off once. Question marks for the Falcons here. Look, Kirk Cousins had a terrible game last week, and I don't even know if he's going to start in this football game because Michael Penix is still questionable in this game, but I'm assuming that he might start this coming Sunday, and hopefully maybe that might help their offense a little bit here. Now, what are the keys for these two? What are the keys for, because look, this is an important game for the Falcons because their hopes of even trying to catch the Buccaneers for the NFC South are falling because by some miracle, the Panthers are at 500 and are playing some decent football. And the Falcons now are in danger of falling out of contention within their division. Now, there's still the question marks whether Cousins is going to start or Michael Penix. Personally, now I would say they need Penix because Cousins was awful last week, losing to the Dolphins, a Dolphins team that is really terrible, and yet somehow they beat them. Nathan Carter and Biaggi Robinson need to get the running game going for this Falcon team to really help out in the passing game here because they need to get that running game going somehow because the running game helped beat the Bills a couple of weeks ago, but yet they were nowhere to be found last week against the Dolphins. Now for the Patriots to win, obviously this is what I feel maybe. Look, Stephon Diggs and Hunter Henry didn't really do all that much last week, but it wouldn't surprise me. I could see them having a big game this week to really, because look, the Falcons secondary, you would think that their defense was supposed to be sort of good this year, but yet they're getting torched. They're getting torched in the secondary. And I could see that Diggs and Hunter Henry might have big games in this game to really help expose that Atlanta secondary. Pretty much you know where I'm going to go with here. I'm going to pick the Patriots at -6.5. The Falcons are in deep trouble. If they lose this football game, it's going to be hard for them to catch up in the division. I'm picking the Patriots at -6.5. They'll beat the Falcons. Key game number 3, going into the NFC North. It is the Vikings versus the Lions. The Lions are an 8.5-point favorite, and I would say that's about right. Carson Wentz pretty much is done for the season, so now there's question marks. Who the Vikings going to start at quarterback here? Will J.J. McCarthy be ready in this game, or you're going to have to go with Max Bronzer? Now, the Lions were on their bye week last week. Jared Goff was 20 of 29, 241 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interceptions back in week 7 in a big victory over the Bucs. The Lions, it's pretty obvious what they have to do here. Look, Detroit's offense must attack that Vikings secondary. And you would suppose that Brian Flores' defense is supposed to be good. The Chargers torched them last week, big time, in the secondary. And if you thought that the Chargers exposed a lot of the flaws in that Viking defense, what do you think Jared Goff's going to do to theirs? And the way that their offense going with that running game as well with Gibbs and Montgomery, and you have Laporta, and given what their offense can do. The question is, can Justin Jefferson and Addison have a big game? Because there's really the only offensive weapons that they have in terms of the Vikings, because their defense, Flores' defense, is a mess. This is another obvious pick here because it is the divisional game, and the Vikings are in danger of also falling out of contention within their division. The Lions just have the better offense. I'm picking the Lions at minus 8.5. They're going to beat the Vikings in this football game. And key game number 4, obviously, it's another year of Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen, a.k.a. the Chiefs versus the Bills. The Chiefs are a slight 1.5-point favorite, and I would say that's about right. Patrick Mahomes was 25 of 34, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he was intercepted twice last week against the Commanders. Josh Allen, in a big victory last week against the Panthers, was 12 of 19, 163 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. It was really Cook that really was the star of that game when he rushed for over 219 yards. I would have to say for the Bills, that get right bounce back game that they had last week against the Panthers, their offense is going to have to really come up with some tricks against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are starting to get back on a groove here. Now, you could say that they had an ugly Monday night game, yes, sort of, but you know the Chiefs, whatever magic they can pull a rabbit out of the hats is really, it's really like they're really an annoying football team here, but they're good. Josh Allen, Cook, and Shakir, they must have big games in that offense if they really have to really get to that Chiefs secondary. And their defense is going to have to find a way to stop the run, because that's been their problem all season, is stopping the run. And given the fact that they might get a little bit of help, because on the Chiefs side, is Pacheco going to play, because he really hurt his knee against the Commanders last week, so he's questionable to start Sunday. And obviously you have to go to Kareem Hunt, and Kareem Hunt has to attack the Bills' defensive line. They got to be able to pound that football and get through that line. And with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce doing their thing, given that the Bills have their problems in the secondary, who am I going to go with in this football game? I think it's pretty obvious. Look, the Bills in the regular season, in the last few games, have beaten the Chiefs in the regular season, but obviously in the playoffs it's been different. This time around, I could see the Chiefs winning this time in the regular season, because the Bills have enormous problems on the defensive side. They have the offense, but their defense is a huge question mark. I see the Chiefs beating the Bills this time around in the regular season. I'm picking the Chiefs at minus 1.5. I think this time they'll beat them, and I think the Bills now are probably now going to be fighting for a wild card spot, because the Patriots schedule, they got a very easy schedule the rest of the way, and I think it's going to be hard for the Bills to catch up to try to overtake them in the AFC East. So Bills Mafia, I hate to say it, but the Chiefs are going to win this time on Sunday. Chiefs at minus 1.5. All right, everybody, please check all of my Week 9 picks in the description below, and I will talk to you guys next week when I make my picks for week number 10. So take care, everybody, and enjoy. Happy Halloween, and enjoy your football weekend.